1.
Okay, this is a call to order of the Bridgeport Board of Education's first regular meeting for the month of March. Today's date is March 8th, 2021. The time is noted as being 6:32 p.m. In the absence of the secretary, I'm going to call the roll. Myself, John Weldon, is present. Bobby Brown.
Present.
Joseph Lombard. Sybil Allen. Albert Benahan.
Present.
Sosimo Fabian.
Present.
Jessica Martinez. Joseph Sokolovic.
Present.
And Chris Taylor.
I think I'm here, John. Can you see me?
Yes, I see you.
Okay, thank you. I'm here.
All right. So that makes a quorum. We have 6.
I just admitted Miss Allen to the meeting.
Okay. Let the record reflect that Ms. Allen has joined the meeting. Are you going to display a flag for the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Testani?
It's
Right there.
there.
Pardon me? There we go. Pledge allegiance. Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, Ms. Valier, is there anyone signed up for public comment on any of the agenda items?
No, sir. We do not have anyone signed up.
Okay. Approval of board minutes. There's only one set. That being February 22nd, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to
So
approve?
So moved.
Sorry?
So moved.
Hang on.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
I have it. I want to know you give me permission, point of privilege, please.
Can we finish the minutes first, then we'll go to your point of privilege?
Okay, it's okay.
All right, so Ms. Allen moved the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Brown. Are there any edits or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Mr. Taylor abstains. Okay, motion carried. All right, Mr. Benahan, what's your point of privilege?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have thank you for the point of privilege. I just would like to have to get up a minute of silence for someone. We get lost. Everybody know who is she, and I already sent you the information. She was one of the person, a great leader from Bridgeport, and she served the Army. We're talking about Miss Tiffany Miller. She served the Army for so many years. She was a great mom. She was the former PAC president on Classical Study. She was a mom. She was a leader. She was a wife. She was a best friend for everyone. And she cared. She loved Bridgeport so much and all the students and staff. So I'd like to, Mr. Chair, with your permission and all my colleagues, to get a minute of silence for Tiffany Miller, that she served for Bridgeport. She served for the United States. She was in the Army, and we'd like to get a minute of silence, please.
Okay, we'll observe a moment of silence in honor of the memory of Tiffany Mellers. Okay. Thank you all for that. Our condolences go out to Ms. Meller's family.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for everyone.
Okay. Chairman's report. I don't have anything of substance to report, but I will report that I stopped by the vaccination center on Friday evening. This was I believe the first or maybe the second dedicated vaccination center just for Bridgeport School employees. It was a really impressive operation. If any of you have the opportunity to visit it, I recommend you do so. It was very professionally run, and I'm particularly pleased with the way Bridgeport Public School staff accommodated the public health department staff to be able to get this up and running. So I'm sure Mr. Testani has more to report on that in his report. I don't want to steal any thunder, but my hat's off to Ms. Papa and her staff at the health department and the Bridgeport school staff who facilitated this happening. If you get a chance to go there, I suggest you visit it. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report. So I'm going to move on to the committee reports and referrals. First one being the ad hoc district-wide branding initiative. Ms. Brown.
Good evening, everyone, and Mr. Chair. We met on the first Friday of this month, which I would say for our first meeting was a very good success. I want to thank my board members for attending and committee members for attending, and also the staff as well, provided Mr. Jeffrey. Thank you. A couple of things that we discussed and a few goals that we're looking forward to improving the communications and also branding in the school district. We discussed possibly creating/constructing a policy for a unified message coming from internally for the Board of Education, meaning the board members. So whenever there's a conversation or a question or anything, we can properly respond, and it'd be the same across all board members. So that's one of the things that we discussed. We discussed revisiting the school logo from past and present. So, we wanted to see the improvement from when the logo started to where it is now. Mr. Jeffrey said he'll make that available to the committee members so that we can start building off of where we want to improve the logo and how we can create a open door for proper branding moving forward. We also talked about creating a branding strategy for this committee, being able to visit all aspects of branding. Mr. Jeffrey talked about unified communications across the board when it came to the branding, and we're going to revisit that at our next meeting as well. So I'm excited about that, to see how the district works when it comes to putting out information for parents. And also we talked about the generational divide as well. A lot of our parents are older, a lot of them are younger, and some of them are younger than, those that have, about my age. So talked about being able to meet the need of parents, whether that is email, whether that's phone blast, whether that's text messaging, and also social media as well. What best way we can properly create a message for those parents in those different areas. We also talked about, I mentioned that reviewing it. So we created a really good outline as to where we want to start. We haven't mentioned costs yet as to what this is going to look like for the district, but we wanted to create a branding plan just to be able to make sure that we have a proper representation from the board and from the district and from Mr. Testani's office. So we're not really depending on someone else to put out the good news that's happening in our district, and also to how we properly address the negative reviews that we get as well from those that may be throughout the district. Those were a few points. And because next Friday in April, the first Friday in April is Good Friday, we all agreed that we would meet on April 9th, which is the week after, just to give a respect for Good Friday. I believe that is our report, and it was a great meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any referrals for this committee, or do you think it's action-packed as it is? Okay. Educational diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Fabian? You there? I don't see him. Is he still here? Looks like he got bumped off.
No, he's here.
He is?
Yes.
Okay, I see. I think he switched devices. Dr. Fabian, this is the report for the Committee of Educational Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Do you have anything to report? Okay, we'll come back. Facilities Committee met on Monday, March 1st. It was a light agenda. We just received an update regarding COVID-19 cleaning in the buildings and had a brief Q&A. Is there anything to be referred to facilities? Okay. The next facilities meeting will be held at a date to be determined because the first Monday of April actually has a board meeting because there is the second week when we would normally have a board meeting is spring break. So there's going to be some jumping around until, well, we'll report out later when that meeting will be held, if it will be held. Finance Committee, Mr. Sokolovic. Oh, excuse me,
Yes,
Dr. Sosimo or Dr. Fabian, did you have anything to report? You were on another call, I believe.
No, I don't have anything to report at this time, John. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Sokolovic, Finance.
Yes, the Finance Committee did not meet in the interim between meetings, but we will be meeting virtually Wednesday, March 10th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay, any referrals for Finance? Okay. Governance Committee. The Governance Committee met on Monday, March 1st. We discussed, we had a continued discussion on remote board member participation in in-person board and committee meetings. A draft policy was discussed and was slightly fine-tuned, and it will be discussed further at the next meeting, which will be sometime in the first week of April. Again, the night that it would normally be held conflicts with a board meeting, so the exact date will be to be determined. And we also did a preliminary review of the district magnet policies with some direction for some possible change. It was given to staff. They're going to work on it and bring it back to us for further review. And that was it. Is there any referral for the Governance Committee? Okay. Next is Personnel Committee. Dr. Fabian, do you have anything to report?
Nothing to report at this time, John.
Okay. Are there any referrals for personnel? Okay. Students and families?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have so much to report. Only that I can inform is that we're working with the leaders in Miss Russia, trying to be sure they spend the money before April 1st. And my next meeting will be March 18, 2021 at 5 p.m. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any referrals for students and families? Teaching and learning, Mr. Skolovic.
Yes, the Teaching and Learning also did not meet in the interim, but the next Teaching and Learning Committee will meet on Tuesday, March 16th.
Okay, any referrals? Okay, it's time for the superintendent's report. A two-part report consisting of a general report followed by a COVID-19 update. Mr. Testani.
Thank you. As you mentioned, we began our closed vaccination site last week for Bridgeport Board of Ed employees. We've also been able to incorporate Bridgeport Public School employees during Wednesday and Saturday of last week as well with the public. We are happy to report that we've vaccinated already at our own site over 400 staff members. That does not include staff members that were able to secure appointments on their own, or if they were part of earlier vaccination timeframe based on age. So we're well on our way to vaccinating our entire staff who wishes to be vaccinated. This Friday, as you're all aware, is a professional learning day where we're going to vaccinate over 600 staff members who are scheduled to go across the district. We will begin at 9 a.m. and we will go through, we're scheduled to go through 6 o'clock in the evening. So again, as you mentioned, if anyone would like to stop by, it's a well-run operation. Again, I have to thank Tammy Papa, her staff that she's working with at the Department of Public Health, all our school nurses who have really gone above and beyond to make sure that they're available and able to administer the vaccines. We have our folks from the fire department who have been trained, our great partner in the volunteers from Sacred Heart University. So there's a lot of folks that are all chipping in to help make this happen. As a result of that, we were considering a return to full in-person for April 5th. After talking today with health officials, we've decided it's only going to be 1 week, and in that week, we're going to be administering second dose for folks. That will be going on Friday of this week, and that's a huge undertaking. So we were going to push back our full reopen to the week of April 19th, right after the April spring break. At that point, all our folks will receive both doses of their vaccination protocol, and it'll be almost 2 weeks after the second dose, be roughly 9 days. So they'll be pretty much covered and protected when they return back to work. So we're excited to get our students back in a more regular and familiar schedule. We will maintain our Wednesday remote day with professional development that we have scheduled throughout the remainder of the school year. But students that wish to attend 4 days a week, all students will be welcome back at that time. That's really all I have to report. It's been an extremely challenging year, as we all know. Friday will mark 1 year since Bridgeport Public Schools had closed their doors due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As I've said several times, I don't think anybody would have anticipated when we closed our schools that day that we would have not returned for the 2019-20 school year. We thought it would be a short-term closure and a return to school. Unfortunately, we're going into 1 calendar year, and the impact that's been felt across the district on students, on staff, on families is immeasurable. So it'll be good to start that healing process. We really want to encourage our families of our remote learners at some point to give the opportunity to come into buildings for their children, so we can start seeing their faces, we can start assessing their needs, and really put some strong programs and planning in place as we move forward throughout the summer and into the 21-22 school year. We have a lot planned for this summer, expanding summer programs that into grade levels that we normally don't offer summer programs, expanding the number of students that have access to summer programs, creating a program for our English language learners that we normally don't run, and really looking to capture as many of our high school students that need credit recovery opportunities as possible, especially our 9th and 10th graders who we know are vulnerable to possible dropouts if they fall too far behind their classmates. That being said, we're also discussing and planning for our return in the fall with extended day, possible Saturday type programs, enrichment programs, and programs that incorporate social emotional support as well. We understand that, just providing solely academics is going to be at some point the law of diminishing return. There's only so many hours in a day. And we know that the barriers that sometimes go along with academic success are social emotional issues that our students are facing. So we really want to plan a very robust team of folks that can deal with some of the more severe issues that we may face as our kids come back to school. And I think that's a big priority. First and foremost, the learning loss is something we know we need to address, but it's those unknown assessments, those unknown needs that I think really concern me and the team the most, because there are going to be kids that we won't see for over a year. They've been exposed to things that we have no idea. We can't fathom. So it's important that we're prepared and we're able to meet those needs so our students can become successful and move forward after this pandemic. So I'm going to end there. If anyone has any questions, any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Destani, some parents, they ask me if now the staff, they got the vaccine, stuff like that, there's no reactions, any staff, they okay, getting the vaccine, they're in good condition. And also, I know a lot of parents tell me this, and for the day one, I was not agreed to open the school, but I know a lot of parents, they see now the difference that, the schools are more clean, they're more organized, they top of, we show, the kids are healthy. A lot of parents, they're waiting for get the school that have the kids back almost full. They say they want the kid. They say they learn more being in the school than being in home. And I agree in that part because I see the experience of so many parents and students go suffering about getting online. They don't want to go. They get sleeping, and it's not easy for the staff too. So a lot of parents, they say they're ready to bring get the child back to the school. So they want to know about any staff they are not getting, they're okay getting the vaccine, they don't have no reactions, nothing like that.
I'm not aware of any staff members that had any severe reactions. I know after the first dose, it's not as common to get side effects as it is for the second dose, where some folks are feeling a little sick for a 24 to 36 hour period. So we'll find out more in a month from now as those folks come through and get their second dose of the vaccine. I can say from speaking to the folks that have already been and received both doses that everyone seems to have reacted very well. Again, a couple of people have shared with me that they had a 24-hour period where they felt sick, they had some chills, some slight fever, maybe a little vomiting. Arm a little more sore on the second shot than the first, but overall, I think people are relieved to have the opportunity to get vaccinated and protected, not just for themselves, but also for their families. And I really want to say, I think we've done a great job. It hasn't been an easy year thus far, and we still have a little bit ways to go. But, we opened schools when the time was right. We shifted and pivoted to remote for a small amount of time when the cases were rising here in the Bridgeport area. But again, I think it's been a team effort across not only the school district, but the city of Bridgeport. I think overall for the largest city in the state of Connecticut, relatively low numbers of COVID-19. And I think, people took it seriously. People protected themselves and people protected others. So again, the Bridgeport's community sometimes gets a bad rap from outsiders, but when things get tough, we come together and we do what's right for each other. So again, it's been a total team effort. It has not been easy. I know our teaching staff, our administrators, paraprofessionals, clerical, custodians, security staff, and nurses have really had a challenging year. It hasn't been easy. I know it's been a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, but I think overall we're going to get through this, and we did it for our kids.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you. Not much.
Sorry, Albert. So my question is, I know that we are scheduling, we're scheduling the vaccination for people. Will that interfere with spring break? And is there a time set aside just for the second dose? What is the time period between the first dose and the second dose? And then does that interfere with teachers who may be looking to engage in spring break? Because once you're scheduled, is there any wiggle room to move it around if they don't know exactly when that's going to happen? Just want to know how that looks like.
Good question, Ms. Brown. So the doses are 4 weeks apart. So the ones who are going this Friday will receive it 4 weeks and right before the spring break. So there won't be any interference with the break. The governor has lifted the travel mandate. It is now just guidance, not requirement. So folks are free to travel out of Connecticut into hotspots and not have to quarantine on their return. So everything kind of coincides with the receiving of the vaccine, spring break, and the reopening. So it's barring a snowstorm, a March snowstorm on Friday, knock on wood. I think everything, the timing is right. And again, I think Tammy and the folks over in the health department really wanted to prioritize our folks and get them in, knowing that that spring break was coming. So, and I know she's even mentioned, the Easter holiday and trying not to get folks vaccinated on Saturday so that it may not affect them for the Easter holiday for church and time with family. So we've been trying to think of all the things that, for our staff so that they're not missing out, because we've missed out on so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Allen?
Nothing now. Thank you.
Okay. Skalovic?
No questions.
Okay. Dr. Fabian?
No questions from me.
Okay. Mr. Taylor? Okay. Anything further to report, Mr. Testani?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, there's no old business to be transacted. We have 4 new business items. First being discussion and possible authorization to issue RFP for non-certified staff services. That came out of the Contracts Committee meeting that was held on February 25th. I believe Ms. Siegel is here to report on that.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. The RFP for non-certified staff services invites bidders to submit proposals for providing non-certified temporary staff to the Bridgeport School District. Typical roles would be clerical assistant, clerical specialist, perhaps a data analyst, or a computer technician. For the last 10 or more years, the district has been utilizing merit staff services to provide non-certified temporary staff. And that has been done with the approval of the city purchasing office and with the understanding that merit staffing was the either the approved or recommended vendor. In the past few months, we had been notified by the city purchasing office that based on the most recent procurement guidelines, it would be necessary for the Board of Education to issue a request for proposal, RFP, in order to provide temporary services in starting in 21-22, meaning as of July 1st. So the city purchasing office allowed the board to continue to utilize merit through the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2021, with the understanding that a contract would be in place for the provision of such staff by July 1st. Are there any questions?
Anyone?
I have a question. When we use these non-certified staffers, is there any way to give priority, let's say, to Bridgeport residents who may be part of whoever the company is providing the service?
Well, the company would be providing the temporary employees. The employees would be recruited by the company, screened by the company, and certified for employment by the company. if we know of an individual who has registered with the company, who is qualified to fill a particular temporary position, we can certainly ask for that individual to be assigned. But the company has the final authority.
I think he's asking if, as part of the RFP, can you put as a part of the scope of work that the respondent would prioritize Bridgeport residents as people that they would staff us with? Is that what you're talking about?
That is what I'm talking about. And just so that you get my rationale, I see the size of this budget and I'm trying to see if there's any way in which we can make sure that some of the resources that are spent remain here with our people in the city of Bridgeport, as opposed to what I seem to have the impression that many of our resources seem to go elsewhere.
I certainly can add a sentence to the RFP indicating that the contractor will give priority to Bridgeport residents in the selection, in the recruitment of prospective candidates.
That would be great. Can you
fill Bridgeport positions? Keep in mind, these are this RFP is for temporary clerical staff. We utilize these services only when there are absences for extended periods. We don't usually cover an occasional one-day absence of a clerical, for example, but we will cover an extended absence or a long-term absence due to a leave, as an example. So this does not represent a major expense in terms of a percentage of our budget. So I just wanted to respond to your point about the resources that are committed to this. This is a relatively small amount, but nevertheless, you've asked that we include a provision for giving priority to Bridgeport residents, and we certainly will include that.
If you don't mind circulating that once it's done, that would be great. Meaning circulating the RFP to the board so that we see that it's been done.
We'd like to get the approval today so that we can
we're voting.
Post it. So I'm just going to add the sentence as I read it.
And when I call for the motion, I'll include with the modification as requested by Dr. Sosimo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else have a question?
May I ask just real quick from past experience, what's the size of usually how much money is spent in this?
Yeah, I don't have an exact figure this evening.
I'll take an estimate.
It could be anywhere from 60,000 to maybe 120,000 or more per year.
Okay.
Obviously it would depend on the extent of coverage, absence coverage that is required.
Good. Thank you.
So I have a question then. I don't know if this is already kind of slightly answered. So once we, Mr. Chair, once we approve it with the adjustments, is this something that funnels through our office or the actual company itself, you know, as far as hiring practices? Like we don't say like, oh, the Bridgeport Board of Education is looking for, or they already do that and then they let us know who they're, you know, selected or whatnot. Is that how that works?
At this stage, we're just issuing the RFP.
Okay.
And we will get responses from temporary staffing companies.
Okay.
Who do this kind of thing. This is more like the typical temporary staffing you would see anywhere else. It's just clerical, run of the mill, not certified. So you could get, I don't even know if they even still exist. You could get Manpower, you could get Merit, you could get Kelly, anybody.
Okay.
And they would be providing a proposal of how they would provide these services and at what fee. And a selection would be made based on what was felt to be the best value by a selection committee at the staff level. And they would come back to the board with their recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then I would seek a motion to issue the RFP for non-certified staff services, with the modification to it as notified, as the modification to it as made by Dr. Fabian, that staffing be prioritized with Bridgeport residents. Is there a motion to that effect?
So move.
By Ms. Brown?
Second.
Who seconded it?
I did.
Ms. Brown, Ms.
Allen.
Allen seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Okay, the motion carries. Do you know, Ms. Siegel, when you'll be looking to come back to us with a recommended firm?
Today is Monday. The RFP may be posted by the end of this week. If not, it would be early next week. The city purchasing office follows a particular schedule, so I don't know the exact time frame. But once it's issued, the companies have usually at least 4 weeks in which to respond, meaning submit their proposals. So that would put
probably
it
60
at
days or so?
mid-April, and then there'll be an evaluation committee at the district level, assuming there's more than one bidder.
Mhm.
If there's only one bidder, then we'll proceed immediately to price negotiations with the vendor in order to develop a draft contract to bring to the board. If there's more than one bidder, the evaluation committee will have a rating sheet that's based on the criteria specified in the RFP. And so that process usually takes, depending on everyone's schedule, it could take 2 to 3 weeks. And that would bring the calendar into May. So I would anticipate making a selection and bringing a draft contract to the contracts committee in the second half of May.
Okay.
In order to seek approval of a contract in June and have it in place by July 1st.
Okay. If you would, once you make the modification to the RFP, send it to the board just as a follow-up, that would be helpful. Dr. Fabian, you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm just curious. Does the board have, or does the board, do we have any programs that tend to, when services are going to be provided, that tend to target either minority-owned or women-owned businesses? I just want to, I'm not familiar, so I'm just asking real quick. I see head shaking, so I got my answer. The answer is yes. Okay.
We rely, the city of Bridgeport, which we do this through their purchasing office. They have an office of minority contracting, and there are minority contracting requirements and points that get scored to a firm that has minority ownership. Is that correct, Ms. Siegel?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah,
Thank
it's anyone else? Okay. Next item is discussion and possible approval of contract with Delta T Group of Hartford Incorporated for substitute specialized staff placement. This also came out of the February 25th Contracts Committee, and I believe is also being reported on by Ms. Siegel.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We had issued an RFP for substitute specialized staff services as approved by the Board of Education. There was only one bidder in response to the RFP, and that bidder was the Delta T Group, the same agency that currently holds a contract for substitute specialized staff services in the district. And the existing contract expires on May 17th, 2021. There was only one bidder. Mr. Weldon had asked during the meeting if we could obtain information on the number of firms that viewed the RFP and the number of firms that downloaded the RFP. And I do have that information. There were 38 firms that viewed the RFP, and 4, including Delta T Group, that downloaded it. Right, so 38 viewed it and 4 downloaded, including Delta T. Only one of the organizations that downloaded the RFP, Delta T, submitted a proposal. And so since there was only one bidder, and we had included in the RFP the provision that that we were seeking organizations that would be non-exclusive providers. In other words, we were seeking organizations with which we could develop contractual agreements specifying rates of pay that would be beneficial for the board from a fiscal standpoint, and but would be non-exclusive. We decided that we would go forward and develop a contract with Delta T so that we would, at a minimum, have a continuation of the arrangement with Delta T and be able to continue to provide services when needed. Again, the contract would begin on May 18, 2021, and would continue for 3 years until June 30th of 2024. And we are including in the contract a provision to allow for an extension with board approval for 1 or 2 years, and that would be contingent upon approval by the city purchasing office in accordance with the city ordinance. Now, the contract includes rates for each of 3 years for the main specialized staff services that we usually use. So the primary position type for which Delta T provides substitute services is paraprofessional, and that would be primarily in the special education area. We do not provide coverage for occasional absence, but we do provide coverage for extended or long-term absence. Now, we are instituting, and I've mentioned this at board meetings in the past, so I'll take a moment to explain again that going forward for pre-K paraprofessional in general education classes, we had been utilizing Delta T. Going forward, starting in the 21-22 year, our plan is to utilize Kelly Educational Staffing. We'll be bringing to the board at soon a proposed contract with Kelly Educational Staffing, which emerged as the selected vendor for the absence management and substitute staffing RFP. So I'm just mentioning that now because I've been working with Kelly to develop the plan whereby when a pre-K para in a general education class is absent, since that absence is reported to the frontline absence management system, Kelly will establish a substitute pool of paras and be able to assign a substitute automatically. So that will streamline the process, and the intent as well is to improve the fill rate. If there's a long-term absence for a pre-K para and Kelly is not able to fill the position within 2 days, the principal, according to our new procedure, will be able to contact me, and I'll confer with Kelly. And if it appears that they are not able to fill it, then I'll be able to contact Delta, as we've done in the past, and ask Delta to attempt to fill it at the earliest possible time. So in the Delta agreement, I want to reiterate that this agreement establishes the rates for the provision of services with Delta as a non-exclusive provider. So moving on to special education paraprofessionals in long-term absence situations, we would continue to utilize Delta in those situations. I'm also working with Kelly to develop a new process for absence coverage for special education one-to-one paraprofessionals, and we'll have more information on that process in the future. And that's because temp paras who are needed to fulfill an individual one-to-one role require highly specialized skill sets in order to work with students and address their specific needs. So I won't take time this evening to go into the details. We'll discuss that at a later on a later date in reference to the other agreement. But nevertheless, for long-term absences in special ed positions, we do expect to continue to need the services of Delta Group. So I wanted to emphasize that in the rate schedule, they kept the hourly rate fixed in years 1 and 2 at the same current year rate, which is $20.50 as the bill rate. In year 3, they added $1 to $21.50. So we were able to negotiate very good rates. The other titles that are included, special ed teacher, occupational therapist, nurse, as well as the others, those are titles used infrequently, but occasionally. And so we wanted to include them. Each year, we usually do need to reach out to Delta for an occupational therapist for a period of time, but it's not on a large scale. It might be one position during the course of the year.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Anyone?
Do we evaluate the service providers? In other words, I understand that Delta might be the only bidder out there, but it seems like they've been with us in the past. And can someone comment on their performance going back?
Well, at the moment, they have around 58 paras in our schools. We have a number of vacancies that have been very difficult to fill in a pandemic, and they too have had challenges in recruiting temporary staff to fill these positions. Now, to respond to your question directly, in the past, they did issue an evaluation form to principals. It was done toward the end of the school year, and they provided us with the summary results, and they were generally favorable. Now, I am aware of, and at this point, I believe it's I would say two schools that have had some issues in that a one-to-one position was difficult to fill. In one case, there were, I think we're up to the fifth para in that position. There have been a series of issues, but that is a rarity. And it also occurred in that one-to-one situation that I was mentioning earlier. And so I conferred with the superintendent and proceeded to work with Kelly on designing a new process. And we'll explain the details of that process and at a point in the future when we present the Kelly contract. But I've shared with you this evening the broad outline of that process. Basically, there are skill sets that are associated with a one-to-one para position. We're writing into the Kelly contract that they're going to recruit a dedicated pool of sub-paras who receive specialized training and who have the skill sets, and we're going to move the responsibility for absence coverage to Kelly for special ed one-to-one paras, and we'll include occasional absence coverage as well, because it's very important that if a child has a one-to-one para as per IEP, that we do everything possible to ensure continuous coverage. So if the regular para is absent, we want to make certain that there's a sub. And so the reporting of the absence to the frontline absence management system means that the absence is recorded on the dashboard of absences and is then open to the available subs for acceptance of the position. And the same process would apply for long-term absences, or if there's a vacancy, we'll declare a vacancy in frontline and a para can accept that position. If we have a long-term absence or a vacancy and Kelly's unable to fill it within a reasonable period of time, which I'm defining as 2 days, then according to our process, I can then go to Delta and ask Delta to try to fill it and then turn off the sub-needed label in the frontline system. Okay, so again, those are the broad outlines of the process. So in terms of the issues that have arisen in filling some of the absences through Delta, we're addressing those situations by moving to new innovative procedures in conjunction with Kelly, and Delta is still a backup. But I think those situations that I mentioned are singular situations. They're a rarity. Nevertheless, they are critical because our goal is to provide critical, important services to our students, and we're addressing those challenges. But overall, to the best of my knowledge, the experience through Delta has been generally positive. We also have to remember that this year, in a pandemic year, the staffing challenges have been tremendous for both the district and for temporary staffing services. We're looking forward to a stronger environment going forward in a post-pandemic world where recruitment will be much simpler and much more rapid.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Fabian?
I have to admit, I've been kind of caught up with a generally positive and generally favorable. I'm not quite sure what that means, and I was just trying to get an assessment.
Well, what it means is that Delta has currently about 58 paras, and I'm only working with one school right now that I mentioned. I won't mention the name of the school, but that had a major issue with coverage for a one-to-one para situation. That's the only major situation that I'm aware of. Now, there are other schools where we haven't been able to fill positions, but that's due to the difficulties and the challenges of recruitment in a pandemic world.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So I'm going to seek a motion to approve entering into a contract with Delta T Group of Hartford Incorporated for substitute specialized staff placement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Allen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Skolovic. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Next, thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Next up is discussion and possible adoption of a resolution to implement SEL in both in-person and virtual environments and to conduct ongoing training of staff to ensure SEL implementation is culturally responsive and equitably meets the needs of all students. And I believe we have Ms. Romanuskas. Did I get it right?
Hey, you were very, very close. It's Remanowskis.
Aha, Romanuskas. Okay, you have the floor, ma'am.
Great. So I submitted a letter written to the Board of Education members. Did everybody receive the letter submitted?
You did?
Yes.
Excellent. Would you like me to read that letter or just move right on to reading the resolution itself?
Yeah, why don't you go into the resolution?
Okay, excellent. So the resolution is to promote the student well-being and academic engagement during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond by prioritizing social and emotional learning, SEL. Whereas students cannot learn effectively unless schools are safe with equitable environments where all students feel a sense of belonging. Whereas students face increasing anxiety as the COVID-19 pandemic continues as a result of social distancing requirements and increasing social isolation, fear of illness for themselves, peers, family, and friends, uncertainty of their future in school and life, and financial insecurity that may result in hunger or stress at home. Whereas young people with strong social emotional skills are better able to cope with challenges, build protective factors for mental wellness, challenges and resiliency from trauma, engage academically, and experience long-term social, professional, and academic benefits. Whereas social emotional learning is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Whereas social emotional learning can effectively be integrated into schools and youth serving organizations through classroom instruction, both in person and virtually, and other school-wide activities. Whereas educators with strong social emotional skills can navigate stressors, foster positive learning environments at a distance or in person, and implement SEL with greater fidelity. Whereas social emotional skills are both teachable and measurable, and evidence-based SEL programming is successful in schools within our city and across the country for students in preschool through high school. Therefore, be it resolved that the Bridgeport Board of Education encourages all schools to implement SEL both in person and virtual environments, and to conduct ongoing training of staff to ensure SEL implementation is culturally responsive and equitably meets the needs of all students.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question, Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry, Joe. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have a
Yeah,
question, but I definitely want to say that in the beginning of this pandemic, when we first had our first virtual meeting, Mr. Testani, we talked about this, and I think it's a very good place to be right now, that we're looking forward to making this not only just in class but also virtual. Is definitely going to meet the need and definitely prepare teachers and staff to better be able to handle situations that our students may occur. We definitely talked about this because this was during the time where students were getting ready to transition into this. Also, too, dealing with, the hunger that our students are facing as well. So when I was reading this prior to this meeting, I was very, very pleased to see that this was included a lot of things that our students are facing, and that we're making this a priority and how important it is right now in the middle of COVID. So I want to say thank you, and thank you to Mr. Testani and your staff for definitely touching on the different issues of making it not just virtual, in person, but virtual as well. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Ms. Brown. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Scully.
Yes, well prepared. First, I'd like to say well prepared to start off. We've been discussing things like this in the Teaching and Learning Committee recently as well, and it captured a lot of what is looking forward. But that being said, I've got some suggested amendments to help it out a little bit. I would like to make a motion to amend by adding, for the last paragraph, two whereases. The first one will be whereas the Bridgeport Board of Education.
Okay, so you're recommending some modifications to this.
Correct.
Okay, there's no motions on the floor. So you can make your recommendations, and then we'll make a motion to adopt the resolution with the modifications recommended by you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. The first recommendation would be to add, whereas the Bridgeport Board of Education recognizes the added importance of meeting students' psychological and social and emotional needs brought on by the pandemic, whereas the board recognizing that there is currently a severe shortage of social workers and school counselors employed by the Bridgeport Public Schools. I know that would be entered before the last paragraph. In the last paragraph, I would like to amend by stating, therefore, be it resolved that the Bridgeport Board of Education will support the implementation of additional psychological and social emotional learning, both in person and virtual environment. And Bridgeport Public Schools will also conduct ongoing training of staff to ensure psychological and social emotional learning implementation is culturally responsive and equitably meets the needs of all students. To further support the implementation of this resolution, the board directs and authorizes the superintendent to utilize a portion of the ESSER2 funding to temporarily increase social workers and or school counselors by a minimum of 20 full-time equivalent positions. Said positions to be utilized in areas most needed at the direction of the superintendent and the staff. Now, I brought this up because in the last Teaching and Learning Committee, it was learned that we have about 50% of the recommended staff to address these issues, like school counselors and what are they? Social workers, I apologize. And we need about 40 positions to be where we should be as far as the recommended 1 to 250 ratio. And I mean, I suggested at least a minimum of 20, maybe more so, that we can, because there's a lot of money. This amounts to about the minimum suggested is about 1.65 million, because as discussed in teaching and learning, it was 3.3 for the 40. So I believe my number is accurate for the 1.65, and that amounts to about 4% of the ESSER funding. Because I love this resolution, but the resolution without financial backing just amounts to an unfunded mandate, which really irks me when the state puts it upon the Board of Education. And if we want our principals and our staff to do this work, we got to give them some of the tools that they need to get this done.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to address that. I hate to put a number on it right now, Mr. Sokolovic, simply because I'm not sure what's going to happen if the ECS funding does not does not phase in this year as it's supposed to, and is kicked down the road as in the proposed governor's budget, because that will take, as you know, over $7 million immediately out of our hands. That being also said, if we don't get any additional funds from the city, again, that'll cut into. So I don't want to say 20. I would like to say, because we do have plans right now to add social workers and school counselors. But I don't want to see us add, I mean, if we can do 20, believe me, I'm all on board with that. I just hate to see us commit to 20, and if we fall short, because we lose a significant amount of dollars from state and local, and then we're not able to sustain it beyond 1 year, people are then going to be out of a job. But I would say that we will do our best to meet that number as a minimum. I promise you that. I do understand the importance of student support services just in general. Pre-COVID, we were not staffed where we should be. I agree with you 1,000%. I just don't want to commit to a number, because then that will come from at an expense somewhere else that we may not be able to fund all 20. So we'll try to meet that number, though, as if we can.
Yeah, I would suggest not dealing with a hard number, but giving him some direction of where you'd like to see it go.
Well, I believe, as you stated in the beginning, Mr. Testani, that without the psychological needs being met, it's going to be impossible to meet those other needs. So I think this foundational thing should take a very strong priority, even beyond, because if we don't have money for, say, it comes out of academics correction, and we put the money in academic correction and we fall short here, and the students are sitting there for academic correction and catch up, but they're not psychologically ready for it, we don't have that first brick in the foundation that they need to move forward. So I'm wondering if it's the number of psychologists, because we got currently 40 point something in ESSER 2 funding so far, with another round coming from the federal government being approved right next week or so. So that 40 million should be in hand, and this 1.65 million is just about 4% of their funds.
Well, there are four buckets that we have to meet in the application.
One of them psychosocial.
Yeah, oh, no doubt. Believe me, if we can get 25, 30 of them, I'm on board. So, I mean, if you want to put a hard number, again, it will come at a...
Yeah, it's going to come at it's recognized that it does come at a cost, at least for myself, and I think it's a very worthy investment to just put this sort of fund. I mean, it's like $1.65 million. It's 4% of the funds in hand right now. And as you said, we may have to hire people and let them go in a year, or there's other alternatives. I specified full-time equivalent positions to give you the latitude to go out to agencies and hire temporary workers to fill the needs.
Well, I mean, we do want to, school counselors are not going to be temporary. There are certified staff. And I think it's probably going to be closer if we hire 20 2 million a year, maybe a little bit more, because most school counselors are coming out of the classroom. They were teachers that went back and so those years accumulate, so they could be making upwards of, toward the higher portion of the pay scale. So we could be looking at 5 million out of the 40 minus the 7 from the ECS. So that's just want you to be aware of those numbers.
Okay, Ms. Romanowskis.
What's that?
You had your hand up go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you. As the district SEL coordinator, I would agree with the Superintendent Testani in requesting some flexibility, because we are absolutely in need of social workers and school counselors. And as he stated, there are plans to increase that. But as the social emotional learning initiative understands, there are other avenues to address the social emotional needs of our students. For example, SEAL coaches, social emotional academic learning coaches. They could coach not only with content area expertise, but also with SEL related expertise. So there are some other discussions taking place to meet the needs of the entire child, for not just in short term, but in long term. So we would also request some flexibility with some of those funds, because as Superintendent Testani mentioned, there are other avenues to meet the needs of the whole learner, as opposed to locking in, isolating on school counselors and social workers, which we are clearly in desperate need of. There's no denying that. But we've been short academic coaches for years now as well, and making sure their deep understanding of SEL and how to build those competencies through academic instruction is also extremely valuable for our students and families and our community as a whole.
Okay, Dr. Fabian.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I just heard Carrie, I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing her last name, talk about the child as a whole. And I wanted to say that the resolution doesn't seem to incorporate anything about where a good portion of social emotional learning happens, which is at home with caregivers. And I was wondering if there's a reason why we didn't seem to incorporate the caregivers into this proclamation.
In the draft of the resolution, that was not included, but all learning with our students involves parents. So our current initiative has parent trainings. Parents have attended our restorative practice trainings. They've attended our cultural competency events. In fact, some of our parents have even been human books in our human library event. So the resolution did not expressly say parents, but we can't educate our children without parents, and they're our greatest partners. So adding a portion to this resolution that specifically states parents, we would definitely be in support of that.
Great, thank you.
Are you saying you'd like to add that into the resolution, Dr. Fabian?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Mr. Welsh.
Okay.
I'm saying that I would like to see the important, I would say the paramount importance of parents in making sure that our children develop, as this proclamation seems to want our kids to develop. So yes, that is what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. Mrs. Kolovic, are you willing to give a little greater latitude to the staff with respect
Yes.
to how funds may be deployed?
Yes, I'm willing to strike out the minimum of 20 full-time positions, but let's utilize a portion of ESSER funding to increase the capacity of social emotional learning initiatives. Make sense?
At the staff level.
At the staff level, yes, because definitely, I want definitely something in there about the funding, because bothers me to no end because the state puts mandates on us, the Fed puts mandate on us, and they never fund these mandates. So it's very important that the funding piece be in there to some extent.
All right. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. Then in that event, I am going to seek a motion to adopt the resolution implementing SEL in both in-person and virtual environments and conducting ongoing training of staff to ensure SEL implementation in culturally responsive and implementation is culturally responsive and equitably meets the needs of all students, as read into the record by Ms. Ramanuskis and as modified by Mr. Sokolovic and Dr. Fabian. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
I second.
Second by Ms. Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Is there anyone in particular that needs to execute that for you? Carrie?
No, as soon as the additional language is written in, if it gets sent to me, we could distribute to all of our partners and
Okay.
community, and that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, if you'd send us a copy when you've done that, that would be appreciated.
Excellent. Have a
Okay.
wonderful night.
Thank you, you too. Final item on the agenda is discussion and possible approval of the 2021-2022 academic year calendar. Mr. Testani.
Yes, so we have uploaded into the portal this afternoon a revised copy. There was an error in the date of Good Friday. Good Friday in 2022 falls on April 15th, which is during the spring break. So that just adds an additional day for students within the school calendar of 182 as opposed to 180. Teachers will be returning back on August 23rd. They'll have a week of professional development meetings and planning time, as we did for the first time this year, which was much appreciated. Our administrative staff reports back the week before, which is August 16th, for again, a week of professional development and planning and preparation for the opening of school. Our first day for students will be a full day on August 30th, rather than start as we did in previous years on a Thursday for a couple of half days, which we found to be poorly attended. And so starting this year on a full day, much more conducive to getting students to return. As you can see, the last day of school will be June 14th, barring any weather-related issues that we may find in the winter months. Also give us a little latitude as well, having the 182 days. It also helps in our calculation of chronic absenteeism by having the additional days over 182. And our staff is contracted to work, our teaching staff, 186 days. The only change we made this year, we added some more Wednesday half days. We're going to work with our lighthouse providers to provide childcare in the afternoons on those half days to utilize for professional development of staff, which is going to be very valuable time that we found this year that we're able to utilize. And to compromise that, we rather than have a all-day professional development day on election day, which becomes quite chaotic depending on where teachers are going all over the district, we're just going to have an election day. No students, no staff on that day. There was discussion, but because it is a city holiday, federal holiday that is recognized October 11th, that is something we're going to work for the following year to have a full day of school there, which would allow us to keep continuity through the first marking period and possibly end the day sooner, but that requires negotiations as we did last year with two of our non-certified collective bargaining units. We did trade off Veterans Day as a day of school to just have a full day the day before Thanksgiving, which we found was very helpful this year. And we'd like to do something similar possibly for the following year if the collective bargaining units are agreeable for Italian Heritage Day. Other than that, pretty straightforward calendar.
Any questions on the calendar? Simple enough. Is there a motion to adopt the 2021-2022 academic calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sakalovic. Is there a second?
I
Second.
second it.
Second by Ms. Brown. Any further discussion?
Never heard me.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Allen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Skolovic. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned. The time is noted as being 7:53 p.m. The next meeting will be held on Monday, March 22nd. See you all then.
Take care. Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.